we talk about it all the time, and I think this is a very common conversation of, like, what it takes to be a good therapist, but it's a lot harder even for the people who really believe and want to be acting this way. Like, we all step into that role of being like, "I know what you should do."
Going Inside is a podcast on a mission to help people heal from trauma and reconnect with their authentic self. Join me, trauma therapist John Clarke, for guest interviews, real-life therapy sessions, and soothing guided meditations. Whether you're navigating your own trauma, helping others heal from trauma, or simply yearning for a deeper understanding of yourself, Going Inside is your companion on the path to healing and self-discovery. Download free guided meditations and apply to work with me one-on-one at johnclarketherapy.com. Thanks for being here. Let's dive in. All right. I'm excited to welcome my guest for today, Emmy Ferguson, social worker, therapist, recently level 1 trained. That's how we met. And yeah, Emmy, thank you for doing this and for being here. What else should people know about who you are and how you got here?
Mm, Thanks so much for having me. It's nice to be here. I guess something that feels important about my history is that I came to IFS through sort of a long personal journey, starting off, I would say, with being an instructor at Outward Bound and facilitating a lot of group processes based in restorative practices and nonviolent communication. And I think that really, for many years, I saw the incredible power of that work in all sorts of different populations, as well as the work of doing that in the wilderness and being on an expedition that provided a lot of uncontrived challenge for people to understand
Mm,
much more about what they are capable of than I think they ever really thought. So, those kind of core foundations, I think, as well as experience in facilitation and sort of a deep keel in learning over time that the less that I facilitate and the more that I can offer the space for people to have their own experience, the more powerful that experience is. So, when I was ready to be sort of out of that world after many years of going on month-long expeditions and sort of needing to find a new context for that work, that's how I ended up in social work, and IFS was the model that immediately called to me and was sort of the most in line with those core values that I had come to understand through my work as a facilitator over many years. So
hmm
that's sort of the long and short of it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
great. Say more about Outward Bound. What's the program? What's it all about?
Yeah. So the base that I worked at was up in northern Minnesota. And Outward Bound is, I would say, like a leader in outdoor education, as well as sort of social, emotional learning. It does a lot with, at least the base that I worked with, does expeditions in the woods. The kind of bread and butter of what I was up to was month long expeditions with teenagers who often were having some sort of difficulty in their lives, whether that's at school or mostly based in the family systems as well, designed to work towards the end of a restorative conference with their families to address whatever kind of harm had happened within the family system and uh, you know establish new communication and ways to move forward. So that program was really beautiful. It's called the Intercept
Mm.
program. That was some of the most meaningful work I've ever seen and done. And then
It
in the
must be
winter, we
some of the
also
most challenging work. So
oh,
I'm
deeply,
really
yeah.
curious what drew you to that because like
Yeah.
there's a lot easier paths to take in terms of
Yeah,
helping people. A lot of
yeah,
therapists, like myself included, sit in our nice, comfortable offices where people come in for 45 minutes and that's it. I don't have to
yeah,
like grade the elements with them for 1 month, but
yeah,
maybe I should. Maybe that'd be great for both of us. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, it is incredible, and I think I have a long history of being drawn to challenge, I would say,
Yeah.
because I've seen my own personal growth in that context so much, and so being able to it's Outward Bound starts, at least the program for training interns starts where you go on an expedition yourself and you are a student. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I had never portaged a canoe before, which is, 70 pounds on your shoulders. It's incredibly painful if you've never done it. it was in early spring, which in Minnesota is still winter. Like our socks were frozen every morning when we put them on. It was brutal. It was very,
Yeah.
very difficult.
Yeah.
And I remember going through that experience myself and the bonding and the understanding of my own strength, and, experiencing that myself and realizing that that was something that I could help other people to see was just immediately like, "Oh, this is it. This is what I wanna be doing." And for a long time, it was and still is some of the most meaningful work I've ever been a part of in my life.
Mm. Yeah, what do you think it is about being challenged in that way that is, I guess, therapeutic or
Mm,
creates growth, which is
yeah.
really what therapy is aiming to do, right? Creating growth or allowing for growth, creating conditions for growth, but not necessarily through like such overt challenging conditions.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think there's so many elements on a course that really can do that.
Yeah.
Um, Somebody at Outward Bound once said, um, that basically if people leave an Outward Bound course and have learned 2 things, it's there is more in you than you know, and you need other people. And those are such foundational pieces of what it means to be out there. I think canoeing especially, you literally need somebody else in that canoe in order to get your stuff from point A to point B. Portaging, when you have a canoe on your shoulders, it's very scary, and it's very much like you have a portage partner with you who is your support. So when it's too much for you, they come and help you. Like
Mm.
knowing that there's somebody else there that you need to rely on from day one. That's a stranger. That's just a random person that is now like kind of your lifeline. It really does create this interdependence like right from the start that grows throughout the course. So
Yeah.
some of that interpersonal work is just like it's so ripe in that context.
Yeah.
And then I think the challenges are really uncontrived, you know? I mean, a lot of the kids that we take out there have never done anything that
Yeah.
challenging before in their lives. Like many of them just have, maybe they've done some sports and things like that, but I mean, going out into the wilderness, Minnesota is known for an intense amount of bugs. So it's like, it's very physically uncomfortable. The thunderstorms are very intense and loud and scary. There's so much that you're facing that you get through and you realize, oh, I just didn't think that I could handle that. And I
Yeah.
did. And the more that you do that again and again, I think there's just an uncovering of this capacity that you
Yeah.
have that I saw so many people directly from the beginning to the end grow in their capacity to handle challenge in this
Mm.
really beautiful and again, really uncontrived way. It's just
Yeah.
like organic in that setting.
Yeah, the dependence on others is has the potential to be very emotionally corrective or healing for people because a lot of times through our hurt, and especially like you're mentioning the family piece, and I used to work in foster care system here in San Francisco and juvenile probation, so there's a lot of wounding around like attachment, which is essentially the question of like, will you be there for me when I need you the most? Whether it's like
Mm,
your 2-year-old falling down on the playground, the first thing they do is look up at their caregiver, right? It's like, are you there, attuned? Like, are my feelings okay, or are they too much for you, or are you distracted or annoyed or irate or whatever it is, right?
mm,
So we learn and pick up burdens along the way of like, I need to be highly independent, right? And even just like the culture of our country around individualism is just so like thick and like insidious, right? Of like
mm,
I need to not only like carry all these burdens, I have to somehow heal them on my own, like in a vacuum somehow, or like in a corner where no one can watch me, and see
yeah.
how much I'm actually hurting, right? And in my case, like I'm a man, I work with a lot of men, and there's, like, even more layers of, like, isolation and shame around, like, not being self-sufficient, right? Even the way we parent, right? Like, I have a 5-year-old daughter, and a lot of parenting is around, like, you did it yourself, like, you can brush your teeth by yourself, you can, wipe your own tears away, right? There's, like, an incredible rush to, like, get them to be self-sufficient, which I understand, like, you wanna prepare
Mhm.
your child for the rest of their life, but also there's like an overemphasis on independence, right? Rather than like a healthy interdependence,
Mhm.
and I've also like lived in countries like in Mexico that's more naturally a collectivist, culture where everything just feels different. Like there's a sense that everyone is more in this together,
Mm.
than here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's beautifully said, and that is what's so powerful about experiences, I think, with groups and with actually learning to work together, because
Yeah.
I do think that a lot of that independence ends up going all the way to the end of the scale where we don't actually know how to work through conflict with one another, how to be in community, and that interpersonal discomfort that's a part of any real vulnerable relationship is not a sign to cut other people off or to, like, throw up your boundaries and your barriers. It's a sign to lean in and to learn how to, like, have those difficult conversations. So there's nothing like being in the woods with, 8 other people to you don't have a choice. You're gonna be seeing those people and sleeping in a tent with them every day. Like, you have to learn how to
Yeah.
address that conflict when it comes up.
Yeah.
And it's really important to know how to do so in a respectful way so that it can be actually an experience of becoming closer, which I think is also mind blowing for people, that conflict can be connective if it's moved through
Mm,
um, in a way that can transform that into connection.
mm. Hey, if you're a therapist, I want to help you deepen your client work, help them get better results without burning yourself out. You can do all this by learning to harness the power of IFS. So I want to tell you, we've got a free IFS resource library that you can download now. This is full of resources like my quick start guide to IFS, the full IFS protocol, a bunch of demos of me doing IFS with real people, and extra self-care practices for therapists. You can get all this for free in the link in the description, and I hope you enjoy. Yeah, I mean, there's something really powerful about a group, you know, like the forming and norming and
Mm,
coming together to eventually overcome something bigger than themselves, right? Bigger than like the group, the sum of the group.
mhm,
So yeah, there must be a lot of, yeah, just richness in that. And I'm curious, I guess, more like your own role in that. And you mentioned the nonviolent communication piece, which makes a lot of sense as to how that would pair
mhm.
well with this. But how do you help these kids come together,
Yeah,
especially when it gets really hard or when there is a lot of conflict?
yeah. I mean, so much is setting up structure. I think we kind of talk about structure and rapport as these two really important pieces of your role. For me, I think that setting up a solid structure where you really have super clear expectations. And so it's not about punishment. It's not about I'm going to come in and I'm going to be mad at you. It's about this is what's expected. This is how we talk to each other. And you get that to come from them, right? Instead of me coming in and saying this is what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to
Right.
say. You have that conversation with people early on and you say, "How do we want to treat each other? This is our world. What are the rules that we want to abide by so that we can respect each other?" And people will come up with different things, and when that comes from them, and then later you can show them, hey, you're not living in line with the things that you wanted to uphold. Here are the consequences of that, rather than I'm going to come down on you for it. It creates a totally different experience where they, from their own expectations of themselves and each other, can define what they want their culture to be. And you're just helping them like, you're a mirror to them and showing them when they are and when they aren't living up to it. And you're setting expectations for what happens when that's not occurring. And the idea on a course is actually that you, as the instructor, kind of work yourself out of the job. So while you start at the beginning teaching everything, like they need to know everything from how to go to the bathroom to like how to set up a tent, it's all new, and you're gradually setting up a system where you can take steps back and they can take on more and more responsibility. There's always going to be, one step forward, two steps back, and that sort of a thing, which is all a beautiful part of the learning process. But what eventually happens if you're setting them up well and they can really take on what it means to be actually communicating with each other through that nonviolent communication that you're teaching along the way, they are learning to resolve their own conflicts and give each other feedback. And doing that process themselves so that you are actually just watching. And, you know, you're going to step in if something gets unsafe. You're always still there. But by the end, if that's, you know, if that's well set up, they are running their own circle processes. They are giving each other really vulnerable feedback and they are kind of their own growth mechanism at that point.
Mm. That must be really rewarding for you to see that type of growth and
So yeah.
yes, like
Oh, it's
the group.
incredible.
Yeah,
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 yeah. Yeah, I can remember, many different instances, but there was one where there were these 2 boys on the course that were just kinda at each other's throats a little bit the whole time, and towards the very end when they were really, you know, at the point where they were doing it on their own, I was, like, watching them set up a tent together, and you could see the tension rise, and one of them, you know, I don't know what happened, but they were, you know, getting snappy with each other, and they both just, like, looked at each other and were like, "Okay, we need to give each other feedback," and, like, just went
gotta
through this,
do it.
like, really
Yeah,
beautiful back and forth, and we're like, "Alright, you good, bro? Alright, yeah, let's get back to it," you know, and
yeah,
it's just, like, that is incredible to have 2 teenage
yeah,
boys be able to pause before getting into conflict and say, "Hey, I need you to understand why I'm frustrated right now. This is what I need from you," and to be able to just move forward. So,
Well,
yeah.
I would imagine that's also where a lot of the nonviolent communication stuff is so, pivotal to those moments and those skills, right? Because so much of our conflict is around not feeling heard or understood.
Yeah.
Even if we still don't agree about, like, the thing or what to do, right? You think of, like, 2 people or, your romantic partner or whatever, like, a lot of times it's less about the thing itself and more about people feeling disregarded, invisible, less than,
Mhm.
right? Um, their helpless parts getting activated, so
Yeah. Well, absolutely, and I think that true nonviolent communication is deeply vulnerable work, right? Because you do have to move from this place of you're wrong and I need you to understand why, or like you're doing something hurtful or bad
yeah,
to a place of like, what does that bring up in me? Like what's coming alive in me when that happens? Which I do think is it's a form of checking in. It's, you know, very IFS. It's very symbiotic with
yeah.
IFS of actually kind of unblending from that story of like,
Mhm.
you're hurting me to what is my hurt? Like, where does this come from? And how can I actually communicate with you in a way that asks for what I need rather than condemns you for what you're doing wrong?
Yeah,
And then from the listener too, like having somebody instead of tell you why you're doing something wrong, bad, thoughtless, whatever judgment, to hear that in a way that is purely from a needs perspective, it takes away that, you know, that part within the person who's receiving that feedback that is not trying necessarily to be mean, is just trying to protect, you know, me. Like hearing that that is impacting somebody is very different from having that kind of come in at them as a judgment because
yeah,
they are also just trying to meet their own needs.
yeah. Well, and I think there's also this piece of, like, can I get my needs met here? I was
Mhm.
talking with an adult client recently, and, when this client has conflict with her boss, things get really fuzzy, and
Mm,
it's like, "Why aren't you caring for me in the way that I need to be cared for?" And
mm,
then it feels extremely high stakes all of a sudden, we call it feeling high stakes, right? It feels like more than just this, like, boss and employee interaction, and again, it's this piece of, like, "Why aren't you seeing me?" or "Why are you hurting me?" or "Why are you,"
mhm,
you know, denying my time off request, right? And it feels so much bigger than
mm,
the thing, right? So some of that is like also about our expectations, right? That there's a part that says like this person should meet my needs or care for me like the mother I never had.
right,
And that's a lot to put on someone else, right?
right.
Because I also bring like I think the nonviolent communication piece is wonderful, pairs really well with IFS. I also like bring a lot of serenity prayer
Mm,
energy into a lot of what I do, which is like you may speak uh, to what's coming up for you. You might do that clearly and kindly. You might name parts of you that are up around this, and you also may need to practice ahead of time a somewhat of a detachment from how this conversation goes or if the person's gonna do exactly what you want or not,
Mhm.
right? What would it be like if they still said, "Yeah, I don't," the answer's still no, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're not getting the time off, or they gaslight and they go, "I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of this," right? Like, "You're overreacting," or "Don't be ridiculous," or whatever it is, and, like, this is where even more wounding happens, right? Because it's like, I am being vulnerable. I am
Mhm.
bringing myself to you. I am sharing my true feelings, and I'm not being met there. And then people that they have parts that go, "See, this is why we don't take risks. This is why we don't,
Right.
actually make bids for real connection and intimacy,
Right. This is why it
because it
doesn't
always goes
work.
like this. This is why it
Yeah.
doesn't work." Right? And then they
Right.
come tell me, they're like, "John, that was a terrible idea. I should
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
speak for my actual needs and feelings."
Yeah. No, that's I mean, I think I saw that all the time, right? It's you hope that this really intentional effort that you're putting into this
Yeah.
communication will lead to a result. But the thing is, like, that's what and I would tell students that all the time, like, this is communication. This is not a guarantee of how somebody will behave.
Yeah.
All you ever have
Exactly.
control over is how you meet them and how you behave and how you communicate. And then you get to choose after that how you respond. And if that
Yeah.
person continues to respond in a hurtful way, then, that's
You got a
information that
choice
you
there.
have
Yeah.
about, yeah, what you wanna do. But that doesn't mean
Yeah.
that, yeah, it's all you can do is communicate respectfully, and
Yeah.
that's your role, and the rest is up to
Yeah.
them. That doesn't mean you're gonna change who they are.
Well, then you're truly free to whatever happens next or to being, in charge of your own thoughts and feelings and behaviors and choices, right? And,
Yeah.
like on this show, we talk about trauma, we talk about IFS, and in trauma, there's
Sure.
a loss of choice and agency. And
Mhm.
so when we feel that again, it's very activating for our
Mhm.
parts, right? There's an injustice happening or something's happening to me and I can't do anything about it. And
Mhm.
that loss of agency is really damaging and has many ripples, right? So again, it might be I'm taking a risk of coming in and sharing my truth about this situation or about this interaction we had, knowing that it may or may not go the way I want it to, right?
Mhm.
Knowing that the person in front of me may be only 10% open to hearing what I'm actually saying, right? And I could walk away from that feeling all sorts of different things, and maybe that would be okay. I can make a behavior request, right? This piece of nonviolent communication, and they may or may not meet it. And if that's the case, then what's my next fork in the road? You
Right.
know, do I make another request? Do I tell somebody? Do I go get Emmy? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do I sit with that, right? Like, it's difficult, right, when people aren't doing what I am asking them to do, even when I ask nicely.
Yeah. Well, and that's so important to set up too is like, what is your choice in that
Yeah,
situation, right? Your choice is how you communicate, and your choice is how you respond afterward. Your choice is never how that person is going to respond, as much as we all wish that if we just did it right, we could change that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm curious more about your journey with IFS and, when it started, how you got interested in the model, and then how it has taken more of a place in your life and work over the years.
Yeah. Um, well, as I said, I kind of, after about 7 years of working at Outward Bound, I loved the work itself, but was looking for a way to do something similar and powerful without necessarily having to pause my life for a month at a time. So I started to think about therapy because it really a lot of the work there, even though it's not called therapy and we can't claim it as therapy, it is deeply therapeutic work. And so that was what I loved about it. And so I started looking into various forms of getting to therapy, and I hadn't done therapy in a long time myself. So I thought that would be a good first step is like kind of get back in and see how it is as a client and kind of consider what it would be like on the other side. And in my small town, there were only a couple therapists, and one happened to be an IFS therapist. And I had heard a little bit about IFS and was interested in it. The ideas around it were, very in tune with what I believe about, you know, transformation and personal work. So I worked with her for a little while, and it was an interesting experience because I would say if we hadn't been doing IFS, I don't think I would have connected with her very much. She was lovely, but I didn't really feel like she had a ton of insight to offer or like wasn't really pushing me forward much versus just reflecting. And it was really the model that was powerful for me, like her knowledge of the model and ability to walk with me through it. And the amount of work that I was able to do in my own system was just immediately super clear of, this is incredibly powerful work. So that was, I think, a pretty good tone set for my entry into the world and was very much like, oh, I'm working towards becoming an IFS therapist. I'm not, like I know what model, like this is the piece that is out of all the models I've heard of, like resonates the most with what I know to be true about personal transformation. So I went into school knowing that, and I right from the very start was like putting my name into the IFS lottery. So yeah, a couple years of doing that, and then actually right after I graduated, I got into a training, and that's it was perfect timing because I just ended school and actually kind of
Yeah.
had time and capacity to really dive into it, and so that I think, yeah, once again, just deepened the work and continues to be some of the most personally powerful work that I've done. Um, so I'm actually just really getting started with, doing that with clients. But yeah, that's kind of how I landed where I am
Mhm.
today. Yeah.
Yeah, how do you feel having been through the official institute training now, given that at least what I could see, like in our practice groups, you already seem to have a very solid command of the model.
Hmm. Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate hearing that. I don't know. I mean, I think the training really was what solidified that for me. I've definitely, I think as a participant, there's no better way to learn the model, than actually really going through it, which is why that training is so great, right? They have you go through it yourself and facilitate it in other people. But I think so much of the facilitation that I've done in the past, like truly, uh, truly deep group facilitation is so similar to this work. Like, I think that self energy is something that I learned over the years at Outward Bound. I never had that word for it, but to be able to hold your own in a group of people that is incredibly stressed and worked up and mad at each other and to
Yeah.
hold that process, it's the same thing as doing that with somebody in their own internal world. So I don't think I could have possibly had better training than being a group facilitator of
Yeah,
like
me neither.
teenagers with huge emotions all the time
Yeah.
and being able to find my own self within that. So that part feels very
So
intuitive.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I would
Yeah.
recommend it to anybody, honestly.
Yeah. Well, a piece that I both love and also see a lot of therapists struggle with when they come to the model is like sometimes when you go into a client system, oh my gosh, there's two or three or four or seven parts all of a sudden right here at the
Mhm.
forefront, and they're all talking to me and they have all got very strong feelings about what should be done and how to do it, right? And why their way is the best, right? And sometimes the therapist can be very overwhelmed by that, the same way they would be if they walked into a group, right? And that type
Yeah.
of disagreement, conflict, tension is all there,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes the therapist can be like, "Wow, I don't know, and I can't keep track of all the parts, and I got to write 'em, is this one a firefighter?" And it's like, "Okay, slow down," you know? And again, for me, it's this piece of like, what does it feel like to not be heard? What does it feel like to be heard? What if one at a time, these parts could be heard today? And what if that's all we did? Would that be okay? Or what if, we were able to hear from just two of the parts and support the others in just hearing the two that are speaking right now, right?
Yeah.
Like that might be all we do, right? And uh, I enjoy that type of facilitation. I've had experience with that type of work in my own background. I'm kind of connecting that now with, for 20 some years, I've worked with a nonprofit called Appalachia Service Project, where we go into rural parts of Appalachia and do emergency home repair, and we're using volunteer labor to do this. So it can be really intense situations, exposures to extreme poverty like you wouldn't believe.
Mm.
People don't even know this level of poverty exists in this country, and it does. And so often working with like limited resources, budget, materials, sometimes dangerous situations, intense climates, like to your point, there's a
Mhm.
lot of pieces that can come up and a lot of interpersonal pieces that come up around like how to help this person. And there's often very intense situations we're walking into, families that need dire help, you know. So anyway, getting somewhat off topic, but yeah.
No, that makes sense. I mean, it is. I think it's all related to how do you find self in a situation that feels really
Yeah.
overwhelming?
Yeah.
And the more that you have practice with that in life, it's like you can't go somewhere that you haven't been with a client if you aren't comfortable with that inner turmoil or, turmoil around you.
Yeah.
They're gonna sense that and feel that. And,
Yeah.
we all might get that little like rumble in our stomach when that comes up, but it's about knowing how to take care of that within ourselves before kind of charging
Yeah.
ahead with our plan or our agenda, and really
Yeah.
being comfortable with this might be uncomfortable. This might be, a little bit messy, and
Yeah.
we can handle that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's it in a nutshell is, of course, the way that I learned it in graduate school before anyone was really talking about IFS the way they are now is terms like ego strength, right? And ego strength is basically like, I can do hard things, you know?
Mhm.
And that's a courage and a confidence piece of self energy. I can do hard things, right? Even when it feels scary. I can navigate um, intense situations and ambiguity, and I can be a problem solver, and I can be a peacemaker when I need to be. Like I have flexibility and all of these pieces, right? And like embodying those, and something that helps for me a lot as a practitioner, especially in working with trauma and a lot of cases complex trauma. I've even worked with some DID, is letting go of the wheel and trusting that I don't always know what's happening here or what's going to happen next or how this session will go, or if the client's going to get way worse before they get better or if they'll ever get better. And these are the questions a lot of times that, the practitioners that join my group practice where I do a lot of teaching and mentoring, we want to know, right?
Mhm.
And it's scary when the clients are like getting worse or they're cutting now or they're whatever, right? And there's a sense of like, I need to know what needs to happen next, or I need to bring more order to this, or maybe we need to change our approach, right? And we start getting like, we start scrambling, and that has a certain energy to it. And the
Mm.
person in front of you can sense that energy too of like, oh, this person's really finding me to be too much, you know?
Right. Well, and I think that really speaks to like courage is not knowing exactly what to do in every moment. Courage is being able to know that you can handle and hold like the discomfort and the not knowing, and trust that you'll be able to get through it. And I think that can be really hard, especially when you're learning a new model, and it also goes along with trust in the model, because the more that you can trust that something can bring you through an experience like that, the more that those experiences
Yeah.
of being in that unknown and being in that like gray area don't feel like the end of the world or like
Yeah.
you're ruining it. It's something that you trust that is allowed to be a part of the process.
Well, in that people's systems uh, are inherently self-correcting, self-governing with some support, right? It's
Mhm.
like all these players at the table, they actually want the same thing. They just can't see that. They may have even forgotten, "Oh, you guys are actually on the same team, right?
Mhm.
You're actually all trying to get that canoe across the river or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you're all worried about having food tonight or
Right.
so who's gonna start the fire or whatever. Like, you guys really want to make sure we're okay, right? We're comfortable tonight." Well, that
Mhm.
makes sense, right? Can you just see that you all want the same thing? Oh, can you remember you're all on the same team? Oh, yeah, same team. Okay. So then all of a sudden, like, the person or the part in front of me is a little bit less the enemy, even though I
Yeah.
still don't agree with their approach.
Yeah.
It's like, "Hey, we gotta stop the cutting or the binging or the drinking or the whatever," right? And the part's like, "Yes, and it's the only thing that I know that's working," right? When the shame gets triggered or when mom yells at us, or when my boss, raises their voice with me and my boss's mom all of a sudden, or whatever it is, right?
Right.
So it's like until I trust that that's gonna go better, I'm gonna keep doing my way, right?
Right. Yeah, well, and it takes so much it does take so much trust to be able to enter into a situation like that without an agenda of saying, "I want you to stop this."
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, that does take an incredible amount of effort on
Yeah,
everybody's part to be able to understand that it really matters to allow some space for there to be
yeah.
an experience of that part that they need to share before you come in with a plan or an agenda.
Well, it usually backfires, right? And like, I like to pull on a lot of G-Psych 101 ideas in my work, like reactance theory, right? So they did this study that you have a little patch of grass and people walk by it, and when you have a sign that says absolutely do not step on the grass, people are statistically more likely to step on it, right?
Mhm.
Because my
Wow, that's
freedom
good.
has been threatened.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So again, if it's like, I need you to stop drinking, and in my opinion, this is also why interventions don't really work. And if anything, you might get some managers to get on board and go, okay, we can at least string together like 10, 20, 30 days of sobriety or whatever, or of not
Mhm,
cutting or whatever, but you're kind of white knuckling, your way through it. You're like a white knuckle drunk, right? Because the healing hasn't really happened. The wounding is still there, driving the whole thing, right? And this part doesn't actually fully trust in self and in the leadership of self. So they're still doing what they need to do to protect the wound, like real healing hasn't happened yet. And it also doesn't feel good when someone comes in and tells me what to do, right?
mhm.
Or to stop doing that thing. It's like I'm the one keeping the lights on around here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and it's like that's true of any, like, group process too. Like, oftentimes, you would see people go into a group process and say, "You're the problem," right? There's one scapegoat, right? Which happens internally too. And, that was such a constant reminder in my facilitation was if we're going into this and people in this group think that one person is the problem, I'm gonna remind you that that is never the case, and we all have something to own about, like, how we're contributing to this
Yeah.
situation. And if we can come in and actually hear from everybody and give people a space to be heard
Yeah.
without that agenda of changing that one problem, um, there is a collective wisdom that can
Yeah.
come about that understands so much more than you, even if you think you know how to, like, move forward and what everybody needs. It's the more that you do that process, the more that you realize that you don't know. They know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so much of being a leader, literally and also internally, with self leadership is not coming in and saying, I know the answers to everything all the time. You got to listen to me, right? Because if Emmy is right and says, let's go left at this fork in the river or whatever, and it ends up being horrible, right? Then it's
Yeah.
like,
Mm.
you know, what the hell? If you're correct, it's like, well, Emmy is like, the only one who knows, right? The
Right.
only one who's like smart and strong and experienced or whatever. So,
Right.
um, yeah, that trust that, like, people and parts have goodness in them and have their own wisdom that
Mhm.
is infinite and readily available if we can help them tap into that. And we have to trust that for our clients too, right? Even though we've got parts and, often managers that come in and wanna kind of manage for the client, right? Or, okay, like, can we do 10 days of sobriety or 10 days of, like, going to the gym or whatever it is? And we
Mm.
get some kind of manager on manager action going on. But, true, like, leadership is really trusting that people have what it takes and can find their way with the right conditions and support and guidance, and that it's a different stance, you know? There's a stance that a lot of therapists take, I think, inadvertently of, like, you can't do it, right? Or
Right.
you are weak or helpless or whatever, or you need to keep coming back to therapy or else your life's gonna fall apart?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize, like, it can be a really subconscious thing on the part of a therapist. And I think that even though most therapists would probably say that this is what they believe, that they want to
Of
empower the
course it's not.
client. Right. That, like, I do think that a lot of people fundamentally believe and wanna be doing this, and there are parts of ourselves that we are not always aware of that
Yeah,
are reinforcing this idea of you need my advice, you need my wisdom, you need my insight. You can't make your own mistakes, like you won't
Yeah.
be okay. And that, we talk about it all the time, and I think this is a very common conversation of like what it takes to be a good therapist, but it's a lot harder even for the people who really believe and want to be acting this way. Like
Yeah.
we all step into that role of being like, "I know what you
Yeah.
should do."
Well, it feels good to be needed and wanted, right? It's also how a lot of us got here in the first place as therapists is from our own wounding, right? Of being wanted and needed or being the one that could soothe or
Mhm.
mediate or whatever, but from a burdened place, you know? And that's
Yeah.
fine if that's the thing and the dynamic that brought you here to the dance, but it doesn't have to be the thing that guides like the next 30 years of your clinical work, of your healing work, you
Mhm.
know? So this is a weird paradox of like, and I talk to my clinicians about this, like, I don't need you to get better. I don't have an attachment. Like, if you get worse, I will still be okay, while also being connected to a whole lot of compassion over the fact that you're getting worse or you're relapsing or whatever it is, right? My hope, and in my heart, I hope that people get to where they're going and that they live the best life they can and that they find healing, right? Whether that's finding healing now and getting clean or whatever. I keep using the addiction example, just whatever. But whether it's that or not, whether it's like, I have parts that really want to see you stay together with your partner or parts that are like, you guys should get a divorce, you know? Um, like that's in there, right? But a
Yeah.
lot of that is my stuff, right? And my parts that have hopes and fears about what's happening in front of me versus if I can really be as much in my self energy as possible. Again, it's more of this sense of like, I can be okay with whatever direction you go. My hope is always that you get to where you're going, whatever that means for you. It's not up to me to decide what that means for you, right? Um, it's like this guy Terry Real talks about it as like a spiritual detachment from a client's outcome, and he does a lot of couples work and whatever. So I talk to my clinicians a lot about that, and it can feel weird and counterintuitive because they're just so bought into their clients' outcomes. Client gets better, great, I'm a great therapist. Client gets worse, what the hell, I'm a terrible therapist, right? I need to go back to the drawing board. I need more trainings. I need to like read more books, whatever it is.
Right.
So
Yeah. Well, it is. It's profound work, and it's so much easier said than done to really understand that your job is the process, not the outcome. And there's only so much you can hold in terms of like it's their life. And when you have a deep respect for somebody's autonomy and for somebody's inner wisdom, yeah, as long as you can keep reminding yourself of that, that is the path.
yeah,
But it's definitely hard to remember when somebody looks and feels lost to not just want to take their hand and show them the way
yeah.
or the way you think.
It brings up a lot for us, right? Parts that have witnessed helplessness and hopelessness before. It's really activating, right? Again, seeing a client get way worse right before your eyes is can be very activating. Yeah,
Right. Well, especially if we haven't gone to those places within ourselves and if we don't have a comfort and an empathy for those parts that are really scared of that and that don't want to experience that. If that feels just as scary for us as it does for them, then we're going to be on their train.
yep. Yeah, that's extremely well said. We're going to be veering away from that, right?
Mhm.
That hurt because it's too much for our systems and we haven't gone there. Um Yeah, I'm a big proponent for this. Irvin Yalom puts it as like we can't take clients further than we've gone ourselves, right? I'm a big believer in that. And you'll see those limits, those walls, that therapists are up against, and clients that are wanting and like ready and needing to go deeper and further. And so there you are, your clients are showing you where your own work to be done is, right? They're showing you your trailheads and
Hmm.
your unfinished business. So that's the pain and agony and thrill of this job is like every day you're probably going to be shown some new trailhead. In my case, as a parent, it's like the ultimate source of trailheads every single day. right?
Well, I'm
Like
sure.
trying to
Yeah.
raise a little person, right? And her big
Mhm.
feelings and curiosities and questions and um defiance, you know, whatever it is, like it's a constant like uh opportunity to either like shut down or grow, basically. It's like
Mhm.
life itself. But if we have a sense of like this shouldn't be happening to me, this shouldn't be hard, right? Or like people on this team or carrying this canoe should like they should do it my way. Like it everything's gonna feel like friction. It's gonna feel like a struggle. It's gonna feel like everyone's against me, right?
Mhm.
Like if people would just do X, I would be happy. Right. If my boss would just do X, I would be happy and love my job. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, you've just handed your entire sense of autonomy into like put it in someone else's lap.
Right. Well, and it's also you're really speaking to this mindset of what it feels like to go through challenge, right? Like, are you seeing that challenge
Yeah.
as something that is being done to you to break you down, to push you past your limits, or are you seeing it as an opportunity, as a learning, as a way to grow and become stronger and more
Yeah.
aware? Because that I think that shift is also life changing,
Yeah.
right? Because you can become you can become really bitter and really resentful of other people and all of the things that are breaking you down,
Yeah.
or you can truly embrace this like radical idea that every person who's challenging you is giving you a gift of
Yeah, an
understanding.
opportunity and
Yeah.
being a mirror, you
Yeah.
know, to
Yeah.
the work that you have yet
Yeah.
to do. Yeah, locus of control, right? And then again, this piece with trauma is at some point, whether it was last week or 3 decades ago, um, you were out of control and you were small and more helpless. And when mom yelled at you or whatever, had drank too much and was violent toward you, you had to just take it,
Mm,
right? Or be small
right,
or still give mom a hug, right? So that
right.
you could get food and shelter. Um, you're not there anymore. So just notice that you're not back there in that house or in that bedroom or in that kitchen at that kitchen table anymore. Can you just notice that for a second? Like you're actually an adult here sitting in your room or your office or your kitchen. And what's it like to be here now with some more choice where you don't have to shapeshift into that in order to make sure you like get dinner tonight? That's profound, right? So just like, you know, kind of implicitly updating people's systems somehow, sometimes in that way, right? Of showing them that it makes a lot of sense why parts think you're still back there. They just don't know. They haven't been updated, right? They haven't looked around and going, "Oh my gosh, that was 30 years ago, and I actually am, you know, in my own home now," right? And there's not someone banging down the door, you know, or whatever, or coming in drunk or whatever it might be. So,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Those reminders of the choices we have now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, Emmy, we're just about at time. You know, one of my favorite things about this experience for me in interviewing people, and I'd only known you briefly through, yeah, training, just some moments, but I had a feeling that we might have an interesting conversation because of your background. And again, like your understanding of the model seemed quite deep. Um, so yeah, I just love seeing where it takes us, right? And even this piece of like your background and working that program and just giving new ideas about how to think about all this and what is healing and growth and change and the many ways we can get there and the many venues in which we can get there, like being in the middle of the woods for 30 days. Uh, so I love that. And you've got some really interesting perspectives on all this. So yeah, thank you for being here. Anything else you want to add that was not said, or if you want to let people know how they could like learn more about you, whatever works.
Sure. Um, yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me. This is really a lovely conversation. And I don't know, I mean, I think both of us could probably, I mean, you do talk about IFS all the time for hours. So I'm sure there's so many more things I could say. But for now, it's just been, yeah, it's been lovely to explore some of the different ways that it can exist in various parts of life, whether it's necessarily called IFS or just, it is interwoven in so many different beliefs and things that are already happening, which I think is also for me always affirming when something I'm learning shows up in all these different parts of my life, or it shows up in Buddhism, it shows up in, you know, experiential education, facilitation. So that to me is such a beautiful experience of learning when it is all around us all the time if we can tune into it. So, yeah, I've appreciated just getting to explore that a little bit with you today. Um, in terms of where to reach me, I just moved to Bellingham, so I'll be practicing locally here pretty shortly within the next month or so. So, not quite yet, but if you look me up by my name in Bellingham, I should be around if you're interested in working with me.
Nice. Thanks again for being here, Emmy, and yeah, keep in touch.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Going Inside. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching, and share your favorite episode with a friend. You can follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at John Clarke Therapy, and apply to work with me one-on-one at johnclarketherapy.com. See you next time.